continued to build rigs and do some rig design. And finally, we embarked on a program for offshore drilling rigs in 1964. I moved to Orange, and we built the first new drilling tender that Rowan had ever built. And of course, Rowan was a private company in those days and was dependent solely on the cash flow we could generate in order to expand. And the Rowan brothers were very wise. They realized that you could not borrow money and stay in the contract drilling business in those days, because as the rigs would become idle, you had the debt and you had no revenue. So they would not borrow money to build drilling rigs. So our expansion program pretty well stopped, and in a bit of frustration on my part, I went back to SMU graduate school, and probably during that 3 semesters, the greatest thing I learned, again, was cash management, because I went 18 months with a wife and 2 kids in the school and no paycheck. And when I got out of school, I came back to work for Rowan and went to work as assistant to the president of Gilbert Rowe. And my job was to try to find ways to diversify the company and increase cash flow. And I worked on that for probably 2 years, chasing all kind of rabbits, and finally convinced the board to let us build a jackup drilling rig on speculation with no contract in hand and finance 80% of it. What made that possible, of course, is that previously the Rowan family had decided to take the company public, and so we had access to capital both through debt and equity that had been denied to us prior to that. And so that was really the beginning of Rowan moving into the offshore business, and that started in 1969. And I was named president of this division. In the effort to reduce our risk, we took on a 50% partner in this venture, which was Armco Steel. And so we had a company within a company, if you will, that I was running. And finally, in 1972, we had managed to build 2 rigs, had 2 other rigs under construction, and Gilbert Rowe was approaching mandatory retirement. And so out of the clear blue, I was named chairman and chief executive of the company at age 37, which was not anything that was really on my radar screen at the moment. And it's been a fast run since then. I think it's been mentioned is that when I came in as CEO, the company was worth about $30 million, and today we're at about $2.7 billion. Wow. It's just inconceivable to me how anybody can design drilling rigs without knowing what drilling rigs do and having participated. Now, I will grant you an awful lot of things I learned I wish I didn't know, but that's been part of the evolutionary process. I think the number one thing, though, that spending 4 years or so on the drilling rigs is the appreciation of the personnel that's on a rig, and the high level of intelligence and capability that you have with the ordinary roughneck. They are perceived by the outside totally different than they really are. It's a group of very smart, very intelligent, in most cases very, very loyal employees. And one of the underpinnings of this company has been, before I started work, is emphasis on personnel. And you know, it's an old cliche, but it's true. The good safety program starts at the top. And the emphasis on safety is something that this company has had for years and years. Long before I came to work for the company, Rowan had a full-time safety director. I think we were probably the only drilling company in the world that had a full-time safety director in the 1940s. And you know, accidents happen. We all know that. But the thing to do is to A, try to prevent it from happening the first time, and certainly to prevent it from happening the second. Charles Rowan actually founded the company, and then got his brother Arch to come in with him within a few weeks. Charles Rowan was a drilling superintendent for Umberlaw Refining Company in East Texas, and he bought at a sheriff's auction 2 drilling rigs. I think he paid $6,500 for the 2 rigs, and that was, now this is all hearsay, but I think he bought the rigs on like a Friday or a Saturday. And on Monday, he went to work as a drilling contractor working for Humble Oil Refining Company. And Charlie Rowan was very much of a people guy. He was very much of a well man. Art Rowan was much more of a technical person. You never wanted to get into a debate with Art Rowan of anything that had to do with law or engineering, because he was on top of it. And I think he had maybe a 5th grade education, but he's extremely well read. In history, now do not even go near him about European history, because he had it down. But yeah, Art was the businessman, and Charlie was the operations guy. And so I think that most of the people benefits and such as that probably emulated from Charlie Rowan. Although, I mean, there was no disagreement with Arch. And just to show you, Rowan put in the first pension fund for any offshore drilling for any drilling contractors, and Arch and Charlie Rowan took their own money, put into this fund, and picked up the past service for all the employees been working for them. And this was done about 1947, 1948, something like that. Many, many speeches I've made, there's only 3 things that a manager of a drilling contractor has to worry about, and that's money, manpower, and machines. And don't ever lose your focus from those 3 things. But money has got to be the most important part of it, personnel being second, and third is the machines. But yet the emphasis so often is on the machines, and everything else will take care of itself.
I would be interested in any detail you care to put on the tape about how you manage cash in an industry with the booms and busts affect you so much.
The number one thing is you can't have too much.
Yeah.
But one of the admonitions that I got from my boss, Gilbert Rowe, and again, you have to take this back 30-something years, but he says at all times have enough cash on hand that you can run this company without a penny's revenue for 6 months. Well, it turned out that we almost had to do it for 12 years. But there was just always this conservative approach to money, and we have avoided getting involved with banks since 1982. We have done numerous public equity offerings and public debt offerings. In recent times, of course, we have greatly utilized the Maritime Administration Title 11 program. But again, we see that as a firm obligation. It's not a non-recourse financing at all. But you got to have a lot of cash. And we've kept our debt. Maybe one time we got up to a 50-50 debt to equity ratio, but most of the time we've stayed between 25 and 30% debt. The next big innovation we made with LeTourneau was to go to a cantilever jackup rig, which we did in 1976, which was hull number 116C, and that's become the class 116C today. And we developed that. Well, Rowan built 9 of those rigs, and the rest of the industry built about 20-something of those rigs. Well, I'm thinking at my time, wait a minute, we've put all this effort into design, and all we've done is enhance our competitors. Yeah. So the idea was born, I guess, in my mind about 1980, is we ought to acquire LeTourneau. And of course, LeTourneau sold out to Penn Central, and then they went through all of the negotiations. And so finally I contacted Penn Central back in 1993 and found a willing seller. And so in 1994 we bought LeTourneau. We had also started in 1980 designing the so-called Gorilla Class rig. The name Gorilla Class came from LeTourneau. They ran a big ad that says, where does a 800-pound gorilla sleep? Anywhere he wants to, and then they had the picture of this rig and everything else. So I called Charlie Cease, who was running LeTourneau at that time, and I said, what would you think about us calling these Gorilla Class rigs? Well, he jumped all over that. Yeah. And so then, of course, now we have the Super Gorilla Class. And they are rigs that they can drill, given water depth constraints and no ice, we can drill anywhere in the world. and they've done a phenomenal job for us.